4th minute of stoppage time. Rashford against Buffon. It's Rashford! And Manchester United have produced the impossible!
Jose Mourinho has done it all. He has won the Champions League with Porto and Inter. He has won titles in England, Spain and Italy. But if you ask him what the biggest achievement of his managerial career is, his answer would be finishing second in the Premier League with Manchester United. And he's not wrong. Ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club, the Red Devils have been hitting a new rock bottom year after year. But despite that, they were able to win multiple trophies and finish second in the league on 2 occasions. And that's because some of their players were so exceptional, they were able to completely mask some of their problems. For every Phil Jones, Marouane Fellaini or Alexis Sanchez, there was David De Gea, Bruno Fernandes and also Marcus Rashford. 2 years ago, every Premier League defender was terrified of the idea of facing him. However, this year, his manager publicly said that he would rather play a 60-year-old goalkeeping coach. So, what exactly happened to one of the greatest English wonderkids of the last decade? If you think he is just lazy or he doesn't work hard enough, then keep watching. Trust me, there's much more to his story. In 2016, Manchester United were absolutely awful. Well, maybe not as awful as they are now, but still. Their play under Louis van Gaal was so slow, so predictable, I swear, staring at the clocks was more entertaining. In the Europa League, they have lost to Midtjylland in the first leg, and by the time of the second leg, they only had 10 first-team players available, which became 9 when Anthony Martial got injured during warm-up. But his injury was the best thing that could have happened. It opened the door for 18-year-old Marcus Rashford to the starting lineup, and he burst onto the scene like very few players did, scoring 2 goals and helping United qualify for the next round. A few days later, he was starting in the Premier League against Arsenal. And guess what? He scored again, not once, but twice. And if that wasn't enough, a few weeks later, he scored a winning goal in the Manchester derby. But as rapid as his rise to the top of football was, the next couple of years were marked by stagnation, and many fans were wondering if he had improved at all since his debut. But that would change in the second half of the 2019-20 season. He found a great chemistry in attack with Anthony Martial and Mason Greenwood, which was perfected after the arrival of Bruno Fernandes in January, and led United to a top 4 finish after a disastrous start to the season. Seriously, I don't think people understand how good was Rashford at that time. Across all competitions, he had more goal contributions than Sadio Mane, Aubameyang or Harry Kane, and yet he wasn't getting even half the praise. But as great as his impact on the pitch for United may have been, it doesn't come even close to what he has done off the pitch. You see, Rashford had a pretty rough childhood. He was raised by a single mother who had barely enough money to feed her own children. Many kids in Britain are growing up in similar conditions, relying on free school meals to survive. But when COVID struck and schools were closed, they had nothing to eat. That's when Rashford's great character stood out, raising over £20 million through his charity and even sending an open letter to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, which led the UK government to extend the free school meals program to last during the summer holidays. But these actions would soon turn against him. You see, British sports media are an absolute disgrace. Whenever a promising young player appears, they are extremely quick to hype him up, calling him the next Rooney, Beckham or Gascoigne. But after the first setback, they crush him even harder, and Rashford was no exception. They were constantly trying to force the narrative that he is not committed to football, focusing too much on his charity work, which is absolutely ridiculous. The idea that footballers are supposed to be focusing on football 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is like saying a bus driver should live on the bus. But there was one problem with this narrative. Rashford was still great. I mean, by January 2021, Manchester United were literally top of the table. But in the second half of the season, also because of problems with his back, his form dipped, claiming he hadn't played a game completely pain-free in 2 years. And a few months later, he reached the the lowest point of his career, missing a crucial penalty in the Euro 2020 final against Italy. The amount of hate and abuse he had received after that penalty miss completely broke him. The next season, he played the worst football of his career, scoring just 4 goals in the league. And yet, when everyone thought his time in Man United was over, the next season he proved everyone wrong, scoring 30 goals in all competitions. However, this hope didn't last long. The following season, not only did his level of performance dip drastically, but his love for the game disappeared. After all those years of being unfairly labeled as lazy, unserious, and not focused on his job, while he was literally living and breathing for the club and giving his best every time he stepped onto the field, Rashford just couldn't take it anymore. He lost all of his motivation, looked uninterested every time he played, was regularly seen out at nightclubs, and even organized a huge birthday party right after a 3-0 loss in the Manchester derby. I guess he has become the person he was once unfairly portrayed as. Although there was some hope he could turn around his career in Manchester when after the arrival of Ruben Amorim he scored 3 goals in 2 Premier League games, it was very short-lived, and since the middle of December he wasn't even being called up for games. It was very clear that his time at his boyhood club has come to an end. So can he revive his career at Aston Villa? I would say it depends. Let me explain. Some players don't have any exceptional abilities but are very adaptable, and through their hard work they can adapt to any system. For example, Thomas Müller or Rafinha, feel free to check the video about him. But then there are players that have one exceptional skill and need to play in a system that brings out the best out of them. And while this lack of adaptability might seem like a liability, trust me, if you build a team around them, it's definitely worth it. Rashford definitely falls into the second category. When he has an open space to run into, he's one of the best players in the world, but in tight spaces, he plays like a 3rd division player. So if Emery can find a role that really suits him, I believe he can become one of the most deadly attackers in England once again. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.